I was around 10 years old. It was mid-December and snowing like crazy. No one dared to go outside. I hadn't even seen a single car out for hours. But though we had the heat on, we couldn't help but bundle in our warmest clothing and softest blankets. I went over to Marcus's place around 11 o'clock for Wii Sports or something. It was now 8:30 at night. We got snowed in, so I wasn't leaving anytime soon. He and I were watching a horrible Christmas movie while his mom was making dinner. "I think I messed up my shoulder last night," Marcus said, rolling his shoulder around. "What you do?" "I fell down the stairs." "You fell down the stairs?" He nodded. "Yeah, I left my phone downstairs, so I went down to go get it before we hung out, and I just tripped and rolled down." "Glad you made it," I said sarcastically. "I'm not," he laughed. "Hey, don't say that," his mom jokingly yelled from the kitchen. I turned back to Marcus. "This movie is ass. Can we put something else on?" I asked. Marcus leaned over to me. "Can't. It's my dad's favorite." I gave him a side glance. "I know. I hate it too, but it makes my mom happy." He groaned, throwing his head back. "Oh, I'm going for a walk," he said, standing up. Hey, it's too cold for that," his mom said, stepping out of the kitchen. "Come on, I'm sure it's not that bad. It's been a few hours." Marcus walked over to the window before opening the curtains. You couldn't even see 10 feet away from the house. "Never mind," he said, a little embarrassed, before closing the curtains again. "You guys don't have to stay down here. You are welcome to go upstairs." All the lights went out. I looked back at his mom, but I couldn't see her. I couldn't even see my own hands in front of me. Marcus tripped over something and broke a glass. "You guys all right?" his mom said, rushing into the living room. "Yeah, we're good, Mom." His mom showed her flashlight to us. "Oh, my favorite glass," she said, pouting a little. "I'm sorry," Marcus said. "It's okay, it's nothing that special. Just go sit on the couch and I'll clean it up after I figure out what's going on with the electrical box." She grabbed another flashlight and passed it to me. "Just hang on to these until the power gets turned on." We nodded and she walked to the back of the house. We heard her move some things around before the back door opened and closed. "This is where all the people die in the movies," Marcus said, poking me. "Good. I'm sick of you," I snorted. Yeah. He stood up and walked around to the hallway and wrapped the side of the backyard. We looked out to see his mom out in the snow going to the electrical box. She showed her light into the box. It was smoking. It looked like it had been ripped open. She turned around to see us looking at her. She shrugged her shoulders before walking back inside, but she stopped mid her tracks. She was looking at something towards the house, but we couldn't see. She showed her light, but didn't see anything, so she continued the shed in the corner. She disappeared out of sight, and we walked back to the living room. We sat back on the couch and heard the door shut. A few minutes later, the lights turned back on and his mom walked in. "Geez, it's freezing out," she said, her teeth shivering. She walked into the kitchen, grabbed a broom, cleaned up the glass, and washed the floor. "Well, I'm going to go take a quick shower. Be good." She ruffled our hair and walked up to her room. Marcus and I sat in silence for a while before we heard something outside knock on the window. I looked at Marcus. "You hear that?" "Yeah," he said. "I'm sure it's nothing," he added. I agreed, but the feeling of being watched washed over me. I got the chill up my spine and I shot my head around. I swear I heard something move outside. I got up and rushed to the window, locking it. "Billy, what's up?" "I don't feel right," I said. I whipped open the curtain. I couldn't see anything. The window just reflected a wide canvas of empty darkness. "Billy just got over here. I need help finding something to watch," he said, pulling out his DVD binder. "My mom just got Caroline," he offered. "I don't know, not really a Christmas movie. What else do you have?" He didn't respond. I looked up at him, and his eyes were wide open. Then he opened his mouth, but nothing came out. "Marcus, what's wrong?" He looked past me. "Someone's outside." "What?" I looked away from him, out the window. It was pitch black. "They're right outside the window," he pointed. "Stop joking." I felt a pit open up in my stomach. "Get my mom." He stood up. I just looked at him. "Billy, go," he said, clenching his teeth. He backed up to the switch. "What are you doing? There's no one there." He placed his hand on the switch and flipped it off. I looked back over at the window. A man was pressed against the window, his eyes wide and his fingertips looked frozen to the frosted window. I screamed louder than I knew I could and ran to the stairs where his mom, who was already in the hallway, only dressed in a towel. What happened?" she yelled, running into the living room. Someone's outside, I begged, pointing frantically to the window. Marcus was frozen looking at the window. The man was gone, but his fingertips were stuck to the window. There was someone outside. He was watching us, Marcus said. She looked at us. Did he leave? No, I don't think so, he exclaimed. She rushed into the bathroom, threw some stuff onto the floor, and then came out with a small handgun. It's okay, she assured us, clenching her tail tightly. She checked the door and walked around the house, locking all the windows and the back door. She came back to us and we sat there in silence for a few seconds. Knock. I jumped. His mom looked at us. Marcus stood back up to get to the door. Don't get back. What are you doing? His mom said, almost disappointed. Marcus sat back down on the couch. Hello? Why are you here? She yelled. A few seconds go by. Hello? Someone said on the other side in almost a whisper. Who is it? His mom said. They stayed silent. She looked through the peephole before opening the door just a few inches, keeping the chain on the door. Cold air rushed into the house almost instantly. I could only see the stranger's arm. They were holding some mail. They looked at his mom for a bit before holding it up to his mom's face. Are these ours? She asked. I peeked over from the couch. The stranger nodded, slowly. She laughed politely, but one of those fake ones you do to avoid conflict. Thank you, sir. She smiled. I could see her tighten her grip on the gun behind her back as she grabbed the envelopes. I could see bloodstains where her fingertips were touching them. I overheard the person laugh. It was unsettling, but I never actually could place why. His mom said something else, but the stranger stayed silent. I got up and walked up to the door. I looked at him. I remember that there were too many uncanny features in his teeth that were too white, and his skin was pale and smooth, with no imperfections. As if a thin layer of silk was placed over his face, his hair was black and oily, his eyes were wide and sunken into his face, all color drained from them. He looked unwell. He was hunched over, holding his hands together. There were many more inconsistencies, but I really couldn't put them into words. When I walked closer, now standing next to his mom, I looked down at his hands. They were shaking. His fingers twitched out, and his veins stressed. He noticed I was looking, and he clenched his fist tightly. Hello, I smiled. He tilted his head to the side slightly. He put up his hand and waved at me. I looked at him, remembering the man from just a few years ago. My eyes widened. You, I whispered under my breath. His mouth twisted into a smile. He started to bend down. Okay, well, thank you for getting the mail. I really appreciate it. His mom said quickly. She smiled and pushed me back a little behind her. His smile dropped and he looked back up at her. He slowly stood up. Now straightening his back, he must have been at least 6'8". Thank you, sir. You must be going now, she said sternly. He looked at her, anger fuming in his eyes. Get off my property, she said, smiling widely. He looked at her for a moment. I looked up at his mom. She made what seemed like the craziest face she could, smiling as much as she could, and widening her eyes as much as possible. He squinted his eyes before smiling and turning around as she closed the door. Her face relaxed, and she looked through the blinds and watched as the man left. His mom looked a little worried. She placed a few envelopes on the kitchen table before washing her hands and sitting on the couch, gun still in hand. I didn't know we had a gun, Marcus said. Honey, I'm a single mother in a nice neighborhood. Obviously, I have a gun, she said, smiling a little. Cool. Not cool. Guns are not toys, Marcus nodded. You'd think that a drug addict would be smart enough to stay out of the snow, she continued, attempting to lighten the mood a little. Yeah, you see him twitching, I added? Yeah, it's sad. There's some weirdo around here, Marcus said, looking for a different movie to watch. I'm just embarrassed I had to do that in a towel, she laughed. We picked a movie while she changed and finished making dinner. Afterward, Marcus and I hung out in his room. He asked about the stranger at the door, and I explained their strange complexion. Maybe it was a skinwalker, he said nonchalantly. No, they were definitely human. They were just sick. Marcus rolled his eyes at me. Come on. Ugh. Marcus threw himself back on the bed. Why does it always have to be a monster, I said, lying next to him. Because it's cooler that way. One day, it'll be a monster and I will look you right in the eyes and say, I told you so. He smirked. We soon went to bed, but I didn't close my eyes. I was stuck remembering that man's face as the thought hit me. I sat up a little. I got a sickening feeling in my stomach. I swore I brought the mail inside when I walked inside. I swear I remember tossing it on the counter in the kitchen. I remember a yellow card in the mix. I think it was a Christmas card. I didn't see it in the pile his mom got, but I had to know for sure. I snuck downstairs, slowly taking one step after another. I slowly crept into the living room. His mom was still up. She was sitting in the living room looking through the window. The curtains were wide open. She was barely awake, dozing in and out of consciousness. I snuck up to the table and looked at the small pile. I sighed in relief. I didn't see it. I picked up the pile and shuffled, and Lord and behold, what I found. A small, yellow envelope. I dropped the letters on the floor and ran back to his room. Shoving the blankets over my face, I tried to convince myself that I didn't and that I was just remembering wrong, but I never fully could. I shuffled to my side and closed my eyes, repeating in my head that I was wrong. As I finally fell asleep, I could have sworn I could hear the trees whispering outside my window. I didn't tell Marcus it was the same man from years before, and I never told him that that man had come inside at some point that night.